Governor Patrick is here because he's doing the fifth to last town hall meeting.
Yes,
right?
after I think this is a dozen or more we've done. They're marvelous.
That's pretty ambitious.
Well, you know, we did it last summer as well, and we had a series of community forums in the process of developing the budget because we had some miserable choices we had to make, and we just wanted to get that feedback. And all of it is very much consistent with a belief I have that we have to invite people back into their government, let them take responsibility for it, let them understand what we're doing and react to it and shape it.
Well, the unfortunate part is we don't have very much time.
Okay,
so,
all right.
I just wanted to, the last question about the town hall meetings is why did you choose Wareham?
Well, you know, we've been trying to move them all around the Commonwealth. We haven't done one of these in Wareham for a while, and it was time. You know, we wanted to be on the South Coast, of course, and just seemed like a good time and place, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, just to let you know, that here on your Daily Gumbo TV, we are generally talking to the person, and we like to understand the inspirations that lead them to their aspirations. So I'd like to, if you don't mind, if we could talk a little bit about your background, your childhood.
Sure.
You grew up in the Wabash section of South Side of Chicago.
I did, South Side.
I think everybody knows that.
Yes,
Tell
indeed.
us who your family was and what your support system was like there.
Sure. Well, I lived with my grandparents, my mother, and my sister. My parents split when I was about 4, and so it was the 5 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment. In fact, I shared one of those bedrooms and a set of bunk beds with my mother and my sister. So you go from the top bunk to the bottom bunk to the floor every third night on the floor. You know, I went to big and broken, under-resourced, sometimes violent public schools, but we had a very strong sense of community. Because that was a time when every child was under the jurisdiction of every single adult on the block. You know, this is the 50s and the 60s.
Right.
So if you messed up down the street in front of Ms. Jones, you know, she'd straighten you out as if you were hers, and then call
Mom
home.
found out
That's
about
right, exactly. So you get it 2 times. And I think what they were trying to get across to us was how important they saw their own investment in us, and that being a member of the community is having a stake in each other's dreams and struggles as well as your own.
Parents should.
Yeah.
You had an influential teacher. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I had several actually, but there's one in particular in the 6th grade. Her name was Mrs. Quaintance, and you know, every once in a while you encounter someone who is just makes you feel like you've been touched by fire. She was there were I think maybe 35 kids in the class, but she still had a way of making you feel like she was just focused on you. She taught us how to, extraordinary. She taught us how to count in German. She took me to the first opera I'd ever seen.
Wow.
You know, she taught us about the rise of the Nazis by taking us to The Sound of Music, which was just out then, and then using that to you know, she really made us feel like we could be citizens of the world.
Teacher's teacher.
Yeah, and she stayed in my life. She was present when I graduated from college and from law school, and when I was married and when I was sworn in at the Justice Department, and she would have been present when I was sworn in as Governor of the Commonwealth had she not passed away a few years ago.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
That's sad. And let's see, she managed to find a program to get you into Milton Academy. So you came to Massachusetts at a pretty young age.
At 14.
How did you handle it? I mean, I got to tell you, I used to work for the state. I did some engineering on the roofs of one of those buildings there, and I was pretty intimidated. And I was in my 30s, so I can't imagine how you must have felt. So
well, it was very, very different. You know, this was 1970. I was 14 years old. I arrived at Milton Academy. I was on an ABC scholarship, as you mentioned. That was the program that Mrs. Quaintance introduced us to. And I saw Milton Academy for the first time the night before classes began. And, you know, in those days they had a dress code. The boys wore jackets and ties to classes. So when the clothing list arrived at home, my grandparents got me a new jacket. Big splurge. But a jacket on the south side of Chicago is a windbreaker. So the first day, so the first day of class, all the other boys were putting on their blue blazers and their tweed coats, and, you know, I had my windbreakers. But I figured it out.
So you kind of stuck out then.
I stuck it out, and I had. I also had some magical teachers there that you know, really reached out, and I saw some elements there of what are common in a great school that, frankly, we're trying to work into our education policy now.
So somehow or another, between your teachers and your background, you have chosen in your lifetime to live for other people, clearly.
Well, I think that's why we're here.
Despite the fact that you've been a successful person, you still managed to, in your lifetime, if anybody looks up into your background, you have spent your life making changes for the better in other people's lives.
Well, I hope so.
What advice would you have for young people today politics notwithstanding,
Yeah.
To choose a similar path. The reason I say politics notwithstanding is because I believe that you probably believe, what I've read of your background, because I don't know you personally, but from what I can understand, you probably believe that laws should not be made just by lawyers.
Yes.
Candlestick makers and pizza bakers
That's
should
right.
be able to do that as well.
That's right.
So what would you suggest for people, for young people, as far as a career path is concerned?
Well, first of all, I think that the contribution that we are all here to make doesn't have to be limited to public service or to elective office. It has to, but it has to be about that sense of community I talked about from the south side of Chicago, that sense that we have a stake in each other. It's not all about me. It's not all about what I can get, but what I can give. And if I may, I'd answer your question with a story.
Please.
And I think we're getting the high sign over here, so I should be fast.
Sorry, I forgot to look.
But I remember going home on a school vacation when I was at Milton and visiting I was going to visit a friend and I was late. And I ran to catch a city bus. And I got to the bus just as the bus was about to pull off from the bus stop. I jumped on. I realized only after the doors had closed and the bus was moving that I didn't have enough money for the fare. And I stood there, they still had coin boxes then. And I stood there, with my palm open, looking ridiculous. And this bus driver, who was this wonderful old grizzly black guy, you could tell he was in the business of sizing people up really quickly. He just said to me, "Sit down," and he pointed to the chair close to the door. And I thought I was going to get a round scolding and put off at the next stop. And I started to explain I'd been away and I didn't know the fare had changed and I was in a hurry and I was sorry. And he looked over at me and he looked back at the road and his face, his expression softened, and he just said, without looking at me, he said, "Just pass it on. Just pass it on."
Wow. There you go.
And just an extraordinary act of grace. And there was a lesson in it that has just stuck with me, that there are things you get, it's marvelous, but what matters is what you give.
Great. Well, I wish we had more time to
Thank
talk.
you,
I
Paul.
really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
And to the viewers in Wareham and vicinity, thank you very much for tuning in. This will be replayed tomorrow on the show as well.
Thank you.
And I can't say anything else but thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Coming up.
Thank
Great.
you. I love gumbo, by the way.
Thank you.